Why are used Alfa Romeos so cheap? Is it names like Stelvio, Giulia, or names like Tonale like this? But no, those aren't reasons they're actually cheap. Perhaps people are just dissatisfied when they buy these new that you wouldn't even want to try buying one used. Well, actually, both the Giulia and the Stelvio both rank higher in customer satisfaction than the Audi Q5 or even the BMW X3 like this. So in other words, most people love their Alfa Romeos. There's a host of reasons why, some of which you probably never even thought about. In fact, that used Alfa Romeos are so cheap. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. First of all, let's try to understand some of the values, why these vehicles are in fact worth probably more than they actually represent on the used market. Here's an absolutely gorgeous Alfa Romeo. This is a Giulia. Let's just do a circle around and show you what kind of benefits you're getting from going with an Alfa rather than some of its competitors. Yes, you get all of the updated headlights, the technology you're going to get from the other manufacturers, but you get a much more interesting grille than you get from some of the other brands. Of course, you have a great aggressive looking front spoiler with some of these vehicles. I love these wheels, these phone dial style wheels, and of course red calipers. Makes the vehicle look very bold and sporty. Veloce, there you go. And of course you've got the high gloss fold away mirrors. Look, large sunroof, and it's actually panoramic by nature. The interior is slightly basic and Spartan, but look at those paddle shifters on the steering wheel. You don't see that in a BMW or Mercedes, do you? Circling around, of course, you get these beautiful tail lights, very unique. Of course, look, even the much more aggressive looking rear splitter there with a set of dual exhaust tips. And yes, they're real. They're not those fake ones. These are the real deal. And from my experience, they're pounding way above their weight class. For example, even in their base trim vehicles, they're more sporty and edgier than you're going to find a lot of vehicles in Mercedes. Even if you step up to the Quadrifoglio, that's the twin turbo V6 version of this, it pumps out 505 horsepower. BMW has to go up to competition models to even touch that. And this isn't even pushing its limits very far as well. These cars clearly have a lot of potential, a lot of bang for buck. Okay, I know it's not all about performance, but clearly people love these cars and they actually rank, according to Edmunds here, quite highly, better than a lot of its competitors. For example, we can look at vehicles like the gorgeous Giulia that's parked behind me here, ranks at about a 4.53 average. Now it's been out a bunch of years and clearly it's paved its path, but people are loving these vehicles. 4.53 out of 5, yeah, it does very well. I mean, that ranks up there with the Porsche Macan at 4.52, so clearly trading punches there, as well as the BMW 3 Series. We know at 4.43 in recent years with the new B48 and B58 engines have garnered a lot of support in recent years. You know, they've gone away from some of their unreliable drivetrains and they're back in business again. But now we're talking about the Stelvio, so the SUV version of this as well ranks quite highly at a 4.42. The Audi A4 at 4.4, so clearly starting to slide down the edge. And even if you can believe it, customer satisfaction is higher on the Alfa than a C-Class Mercedes. Things have changed these days, haven't they? The first reason is this. We're seeing prices like this, big price adjustments, of course, lots of conversation to bring people into the brand. Here's a sign showing you how much car you can get for how little money. And so with all those incentives, the dealers are trying to get you into the dealership, pricing their vehicles accordingly. Interest rates are very aggressive for these vehicles as new. So when you have a great incentivized brand new purchase, it's hard to decide and go buying a used one when you can get a new one for a relatively strong incentive. You also have slightly better warranties with some of the Alfas. Of course, 4 years as a basic. You can add a CPO for 5 years for relatively minimal cost, and you get yourself a cool Italian sporty sedan or SUV for relatively decent money. When a lot of the other manufacturers are only offering 3-year warranty as standard, it does make you wonder, maybe I should buy a new one. Therefore, it leaves the used Alfa Romeo slightly stranded and orphaned. So the second reason has to do with the fact that unless you're living in a city with at least 1 million people population, you're probably not going to have a lot of great support. I've seen a lot of on the forums where people are worried about getting their vehicle serviced properly just because there's not a lot of dealer opportunity to actually get your vehicle in. If you live in a smaller community, you're going to have to truck it in, pull it in, tow it in, whatever it be. But a lot of people don't want to deal with that hassle. A lot of people want 2 or 3 options because if they don't like the dealer that they're dealing with in their city, they might worry about having that bad relationship going sideways and then not having the support that they hope for their brand new Alfa Romeo. but that is a factor when you're talking about buying a used vehicle, whether that's a worthwhile venture getting into one of these used Alfa Romeos. And if they don't have those strong relationships with their local dealer, they're going to have to go to another city, maybe 3 or 5 or 10 hours away from the city that they live in today, and that just puts them in a spot of being awkward. They have to tow it, trailer it, truck it, whatever it be. It just becomes a very difficult vehicle to support and maintain and service. You see it all over the forums. People talk about that. That's one of the key elements of owning an Alfa, or even possibly a Maserati from their sister company. A third reason why that a lot of these Alfas on the used car market just aren't holding up in their pricing is they just never caught on. The beautiful Stelvio came out in 2018, but we also talk about the Giulia, which is essentially the standard sedan version of the same vehicle, came out in 2017, and it got rave reviews. Why? It had more power than the base BMW. Yes, the base BMW at this point, the 3 Series, had the 2-liter turbo 4 that made about 255 horsepower. This makes 280. That's right. Mercedes-Benz falls even below BMW, and Audi even below that. These Giulias received a lot of great thumbs up from reviewers across the board that said it handled like it was on rails, had better performance than some of its competitors in terms of straight line, and it brings a new style and essence to the car world. And clearly, it was a vehicle that a lot of people had to get their hands on. At least that's what a lot of the rave reviewers were saying, but it just never quite caught on. Vehicles that don't do well on new car market as a new vehicle, then they're probably not going to be very hot on the used car market, and the desirability just was never there. As a matter of fact, even still to this day, less than 10,000 Giulias are sold every year within the US, whereas that's less than a third of the BMW 3 Series vehicles. The next reason why used Alfa Romeos are so cheap, just ask yourself this simple question: why would you buy a vehicle like this when in fact you can buy a gorgeous Jaguar that's been around a long time and has somewhat proved itself? Or you can get yourself powerful BMWs with beautiful turbo inline 6s or 4 cylinders and reliability that's coming in line with the modern day Hondas. Or you can get Porsche Macans or Cayennes that, particularly in the entry-level vehicles, are competitive with Alfas. And even Teslas are on the radar now too, for vehicles that represent great competition. That's right, it comes down to competition. You can get so many great vehicles on the used car market that are competitively priced, provide great performance, great bang for buck, have reputations maybe slightly better for durability, or at least they're more known because the sample sizes are much higher, they've been around a long time, and people just know what to expect with some of their competition. So buying yourself a used Alfa Romeo just represents a huge gamble. A gamble in which a lot of people aren't willing to take, with $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 to throw out of their hard-earned bucks to get into one of these vehicles. And the reputation of brand quality is a significant one, and that's a big reason why people are looking elsewhere. They don't necessarily go directly to Alfa. They also don't know. The brand familiarity is not quite there. The branding of Alfa has not been pushed, particularly in the North American market, like you see BMWs or Audis or Mercedes. So therefore, they're always going to have a tougher time out of the gates selling both new and used Alfa Romeos. And right there's the next reason why, in fact, used Alfas are so cheap. Now, while this is a new model, it hasn't actually hit the depreciation mark yet. This is going to be an impact on the overall value of used Alfas. I mean, clearly, a lot of it comes down to the fact that it shares a lot of its skin and components with a much lower grade of vehicle. We do know, in fact, that Alfa is part of the FCA, the Fiat Chrysler Automobile Group. We have Fiat, Dodge, Chrysler, and all of those brands, of course, associated with Alfa as well. And so, unfortunately, Alfa Romeo brought this model out to be a new breakthrough vehicle, of course, for the brand. Then along comes Dodge, realizing that they weren't hitting emissions. They had vehicles lacking in the overall fuel economy, and of course they had to do something quickly. So while this is a cute little vehicle, yes, it has your trademark Alfa Romeo grille, and it has its own unique headlights, and yes, you get some interesting wheels. This is the Veloce right there, and I love the Italian colors you'll see. Of course, your one-touch accent in, and the interior is actually very nicely bolstered, nice, decent quality. Of course, you do also have the oversized sunroof or panoramic glass on top, and some really interesting style. Look at that. Yes, very interesting bits all over this vehicle. Yes, you have nice little details like that, beautiful tail lights. Of course, this one looks like it's a little fogged over, probably already has moisture inside there. Unfortunately, we're dealing with the Tonale here. And unfortunately, because Dodge had to come up with something quick, knee-jerk, they took a vehicle like this, changed a little bit on the front, the bumper, the headlights, as well as a little bit on the interior, and they have the same vehicle in the Dodge Hornet. at a substandard price point at a substandard vehicle. Now, of course, there's that perception of Dodge as well makes this vehicle slightly watered down, and that's going to also further hamper the value of this vehicle in the used car market, which sadly will blend out the average of Alfa Romeos, thus hurting their resale. And another big one here, of course, for Alfa Romeos and why they aren't holding great value in the used car market is the fear. The fear of problems, the fear of issues with a used Alfa Romeo. Particularly once you're outside of warranty, you often fear what's going to be the next imminent failure. Well, I can honestly report a lot of that is fear mongering. There have been some problems. Yes, we'll talk about some of that in a second, but honestly, not a lot of major mechanical failures. You don't hear a lot of blown engines. You don't hear a lot of blown transmissions. And a lot of the issues are more nickel and dime, more frequent, but somewhat nickel and dime. Things like the back brakes. That's a common issue people are saying are known. There's been issues with the back brakes breaking, locking up, or problems with the calipers or the discs themselves. And so the brakes have been an issue. As well, specifically, we talk about the ABS system. Of course, anti-lock braking has been a bit of an issue in some cases with the module. That's seizing up, of course. Without ABS, you have no anti-lock brake, and it's not great when you have icy and road conditions when you need the brakes to actually give you maximum threshold braking in the event of the required stop. Of course, if you have something in front of you, you want to be able to stop on time. There's also been complaints about misfires. Of course, misfires are really chalked up mostly to coils as well as spark plugs, and that can really happen on any vehicle. A lot of that just really is more maintenance and just getting it dialed in. It's a relatively minor issue, and with a little bit of repair and maintenance, that can be corrected. Now, ignoring your check engine light on the dash and neglecting a misfire can result in bigger issues. Of course, you can burn out a catalytic converter, and that will start resulting in huge dollars of repairs. But 2018 and 2019 model years, there's been complaints about some fuel gauge issues and not reading properly, as well as 2017 to 2019 issues that people are talking about the inability to deactivate the adaptive cruise control that these vehicles actually have as a feature in there for protection. And clearly it's more about around the electronics and some of the challenges there. There's also been talks about battery draw as well as dashboard lights, and I can literally attest with my Mercedes C300 with a low battery voltage, it often results in a lot of other issues. Same thing here. Start-stop system becomes deactivated. A lot of your protective, adaptive cruise, a lot of your lane departure and other features start to get put on the back burner and reprioritized. So if you have a weak battery that's drawing down because you don't put a lot of miles on your vehicle, you could result in a lot of problems, electric gremlins, and these vehicles are no different. But be sure to check out that battery because more often than not, it's actually just a weak battery that is causing a lot of these electric issues. So other than a few random glitches, which has been known particularly in some earlier generations, a lot of the polish has been buffed out of these vehicles. A lot of the issues have gone away, and some of the problems have been corrected over the years. Now things have gotten better, and to the point where J.D. Powers actually ranks these vehicles at 74 out of 100 in terms of overall reliability, which puts them somewhere smack dab in the middle of the vast majority of vehicles on the market today. So they're really no more or less reliable than a lot of other vehicles from brands that you know and love. Clearly, if you're shopping for a used luxury vehicle or something with a sporting intentions on the import level, try Italian. Alfa Romeo actually has some great offerings on a vehicle that is better to drive, has better handling, better acceleration than most of its competitors, and equal fun. And with all of that said, be sure to check out why are used Maseratis so cheap. Yes, in fact, you can get some phenomenal deals if you're willing to put in the time and the effort. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.